Hello, my name is Tanya Octave. I am a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and wellness coach, speaking to you today about a subject that really touches all of us: grief. Growing up in Long Beach, California, really has shaped my understanding of community, connection, and belonging. The coastal city with its diverse neighborhoods, the Queen Mary against the horizon, and the vibrant cultural tapestry became more than just a backdrop. It became part of my identity. Recently, grief has entered my life with an intensity that has been both humbling and transformative. Death has visited not as a distant concept, but as an intimate reality, claiming family members, friends, and leaving behind a community really struggling to make sense of these losses. What surprised me most wasn't just the depth of my own sorrow, but witnessing how grief manifests differently across my community. Some retreated into isolation, their pain too raw for sharing. Others channeled their anguish into anger at circumstances, at systems, at the unfairness of timing. Many found themselves caught in depression's undertow, struggling to find meaning or purpose in daily routines that just suddenly seemed hollow. It was during a particular difficult morning when the weight of these losses felt almost unbearable that I recognized the need to create something meaningful from this experience. And as a wellness professional, I guide others through their grief journeys, but experiencing profound loss personally revealed dimensions of grief that really no textbook or training could fully prepare me for. So today I want to share with you a holistic approach to understanding really the process of grief. One where we integrate the body, the mind, and the spirit through what I call the octaves method. This isn't about getting over grief or following prescribed stages. Rather, it's about honoring grief as a profound expression of love while finding pathways to carry that love forward into healing. So, before we explore the octaves method, let's understand how grief actually shows up in our life. Research tells us that grief just isn't sadness, it's a complex, multidimensional experience that really affects every aspect of our being. Physically, grief can manifest as fatigue, sleep disturbances, changes in appetite, a weakened immune system, chest pain, digestive issues, headaches. Our bodies are carrying our grief, sometimes more visible than words can express. Emotionally, grief appears not just as sadness, but as anger, irritability, anxiety, fear, guilt, regret, numbness, detachment, confusion, and a profound yearning for what's been lost. When we see anger or aggression in someone's grieving, we often witness love that has nowhere to go. Behaviorally, grief can lead to social withdrawal and isolation, restlessness, or its opposite, lethargy, avoidance of behaviors, and sometimes desperate searching for connection to what has been lost. When someone who's grieving seems to push others away, it's rarely rejection. It's often protection of a heart too tender to engage. Spiritually, grief can really shake our foundations, challenging our beliefs, a sense of meaning. Some find faith deepened through grief, while others question what they once held and believed about grief. And spirituality. Both responses are valid in the grief journey. What's crucial to understand is that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. The popular notion of grief processing through these kind of neat stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance can be a helpful framework, but grief rarely follows this linear path. Instead, it moves like spirals with emotions reoccurring in different intensities over time. Research tells us that while most people adopt to loss over time, some experience what is called complicated grief, while or or I should say, where painful emotions remain intense and debilitating for even extended periods of time. This isn't a failure of grieving correctly, it's a recognition that some losses require additional support for integration. So, the OCTAVES method offers a holistic framework for processing grief that honors the integration of the body, mind, and spirit. Each letter in the octaves represents a dimension of healing that, when addressed all together, can really support the whole person through grief. So let's talk a little bit about that. O for observation. Observation really is cultivating awareness of our grief without judgment or resistance. It's about creating that space to witness our pain, then being consumed by it. When grief overwhelms us, mindful practice can help us to really step back and observe our thoughts and our feelings and physical sensations that may arise. It isn't about detachment, it's about creating enough space to just breathe alongside our pain. Try this simple practice. When grief arises in intense ways, place one hand on your heart. Take 3 slow breaths and silently acknowledge this is grief, this is love, this belongs. This small act of spiritual witnessing can really transform how we relate to our pain. In my own grief journey, observation became a sanctuary when the pain felt so overwhelming. By learning to witness my grief rather than identifying completely with it, I found moments of peace, even in the midst of profound sorrow. So then there's C for compassion. Compassion involves extending kindness towards ourselves and others while we're going through the grieving process. Research shows us that self compassion during bereavement is also associated with less depression and less anxiety and even greater resilience over time. When grief manifests, let's say, as anger or guilt or shame, self judgment usually will follow. We criticize ourselves for not moving on or for having certain feelings. Compassion creates a different path, one where all our emotions are welcomed as natural expressions of love and loss. So try placing your hand on your heart and speaking to yourself as you would to a dear friend who is suffering. Something like, this is incredibly hard. It's natural to feel this way. May I be kind to myself in this pain. When grief manifests as anger in my life, I initially judged myself harshly for these feelings. Learning to practice compassion really allowed me to recognize anger as a natural expression of love and loss. And then there's T for therapy. Our therapeutic activities provide you tools and frameworks for understanding and expressing grief really in constructive ways. Research shows that constructive therapeutic interventions can help the process of complicated grief and create meaning from the loss. This might include journaling about our grief experiences, creating art that expresses emotions where words cannot capture, or working with a clinician trained in grief counseling. The goal isn't to fix grief, but to provide maybe containers that can help us integrate it. One powerful therapeutic activity is writing a letter to your grief, acknowledging its presence and purpose in your life. This externalizes grief as something you're in a relationship with rather than something that just defines you. Therapeutic activities provide us with concrete tools when grief felt most chaotic. Creative art that expressed my feelings with when words failed, or engaging in more structured writing exercises, and even participating in grief support groups all helped me find pathways through the pain that felt otherwise insurmountable. And then there's A for animals and our playfulness. The dimension reconnects us back to that joy and spontaneity and the present moment through interactions with animals and engagement in just playful activities. Research on animal assisted therapy really shows significant benefits for those experiencing grief. including reduced anxiety and increased feelings of comfort. Grief can make us forget that joy and sorrow can really kind of coexist. Spending time with animals, whether pets or in nature, can reconnect us with simple presence and unconditional acceptance. Similarly, allowing ourselves moments of playfulness isn't disrespectful to the loss, it's life affirming. So try spending time with a pet, watching birds, or simply noticing the nature just in the world around you. Allow yourself to experience moments of lightness without guilt. Recognizing that includes rejecting. Actually, it's like recognizing that healing includes reconnecting with the joy. In the depths of grief, my connection with animals really provides comfort that sometimes humans' interactions could not. The unconditional presence of my dog and the simple joy of watching birds outside my window reminded me that life continues to offer moments of beauty even in dark times. And then there's V for Victuals, nutritional health. Victuals address the fundamental need of nourishment during grief. Research indicates that grief can be significantly impact physical health, including nutritional status, while proper nutrition plays a vital role in supporting mental health, especially during bereavement. Grief also disrupts eating patterns. Some people lose their appetite just entirely, while others turn to comfort foods that may ultimately really deplete our energy. Approaching nutrition as self care rather than an obligation can help. Focus on simple, nourishing foods that require maybe minimal preparation. Stay hydrated, as dehydration can really intensify emotional distress. Consider community meals or combine nutrition maybe with some social support. During intense grief, my appetite just disappeared completely at times. While with others, I found myself turning to maybe comfort foods that often left me feeling a little bit more worse. So, learning to approach nutrition as an act of self care rather than another obligation helped me gradually rebuild a nourishing relationship with food. And then there's E for exercise. Physical movement has shown to really reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, which are usually associated with grief. Movement helps process emotions stored in the body and releases endorphins that can temporarily alleviate grief's intensity. This doesn't mean now forcing yourself into these intense workouts. Gentle movement like walking, stretching, dancing can really be profoundly healing. The goal is to reconnect with your body as a resource rather than a source of pain. Try a gentle walking meditation, focusing on the sensations of your feet touching the earth while you go step by step by step by step, or putting on some music that really resonates with your current emotional state and allow your body to move more freely into the response. When grief left me feeling disconnected to my body, simple movement practices really helped me to return to myself. Walking along the Long Beach shoreline became a form of moving meditation, while gentle yoga really helped release the physical sensations and tension that accumulated as I carried my grief. And then there's S for socialize. Social support is consistently identified as one of probably the most significant factors in healthy grief adaptation. Research shows that isolation really exacerbates grief symptoms, while meaningful connection provides essential emotional resources for healing. Yet, socialization during grief requires maybe some discernment. Some relationships will nourish you during this time, while others may drain your limited energy. So, learning to communicate your challenging needs and maybe setting boundaries are going to be essential. So consider who is in your life can and can simply be present with you and your grief without trying to fix it. Grief support groups can also provide connection with others who understand the terrain you're navigating. The community in Long Beach provides crucial support during my grief journey, though I needed to learn to communicate my changing needs. Some days I felt solitude, while others I desperately needed maybe some company. So, learning to honor both impulses and communicate them clearly to others can be an important part, really, of the healing process. So, what about the integration? The power of the octave method really lies in the integration of the body, mind, and spirit. Rather than addressing these aspects in isolation, this approach recognizes their interconnectedness and offers practices that really honor just the whole person. When grief manifests physically as fatigue or illness, nutritional and movement practices supports the body's healing. When grief appears as emotional distress, compassion and therapeutic activities offer this pathway for expression and processing. When grief challenges our sense of meaning, observation and socialization provide just that spiritual and relational context for integration. Grief is not something to overcome, it's a profound expression of love that transfers over time. The Octaves method does not promise to eliminate grief, but it offers a compassionate framework for living with it more fully and more authentically. As you navigate your own grief journey, remember that healing isn't linear. There may be days when you feel you've moved forward, only to be overwhelmed by grief again. This isn't regression, it's a natural rhythm of healing. I invite you to approach your grief with a gentleness, a curiosity, and trust in your capacity to integrate this experience into the continuing story of your life. The pain of grief is real, but so is your resilience. And while the relationship with your loved one has changed form, the love remains, transformed but undiminished by death. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of grief and healing. May the Octaves method really offer you support and guidance as you navigate your own path through loss. And may you find moments of peace even in the midst of profound sorrow. If this message resonates with you and you'd like to have a consultation, I offer free consultations to help you on your journey towards wellness, happiness, and success.